want to just go ahead and kick us off, and I'll keep monitoring for people to join.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate it. To our Public Policy Committee and elected officials, thank you for joining us today. This time has become very apparent that the issue of advocacy is extremely important. This has become very much in focus to our staff, our members, and through this process, Matt and the other staff have taken on the business navigation role in addition to their already important jobs. And that navigation role has led them to find advocacy issues locally that were able to be addressed quickly and in proper manner for how St. Pete and the county our nuances, because we were uniquely positioned to do so ahead of time due to Matt's work, the chamber's work, the members of this public policy's work on advocacy. We had the foundation to address advocacy issues, and our members are recognizing that that is one of the strongest assets of our chamber. So a large thank you to staff, to this committee for setting the groundwork for the work that's being done right now, and to the collaboration of our local officials. Your collaboration with us has really helped us get the businesses the help that they need and the transition through this process. So thank you very much. We will continue to build on this advocacy through this process and transition, listening to how this crisis has affected us and how we should move in the future. For that update, I'd like to recognize Chris to give us an update on metrics in the latest. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jason. How are you this morning?
Hanging in there. I can't complain too much.
Holy cow. Did everybody get a Memorial Day, I hope? It was wonderful. It's good to see everybody's face. Yes, so I think things are going well. We're going to talk about a few things that have happened, but I have started every meeting that I've been part of with just the metrics of how we would know if we're doing well or not as far as our economy based on our health. So let me just quickly, if you don't mind, Matt, I'm going to share the screen real quick and see what happens. Let's see. All right, now hopefully you should see, this is the first dashboard I want to take you to. This is for Pinellas County. This is that the now in the spotlight dashboard from the Florida Health Department. The first thing I want to really show you all is this number down in the very bottom, this 3.3%. Since we started this and we started even talking about this, the number that the mayor had thrown out, the number that we all thought was the number you wanted your total number to be under was 6%. And we had, when we first started putting our dashboards together, the Pinellas County was about 4.8%, and it has steadily gone down to now 3.3%. But let's look at today's numbers. So this is what the Florida Chamber puts together for each county, and we use it for our community. This is Pinellas County. And obviously green means good, red means it's going the wrong way, and blue means it's just an unchanged number. So the two numbers we look at from this that are the numbers, again, the gates that would tell us if we have to go back into isolation or we would have to cut back on keeping the economy moving. The first one is this weekly percent. Now this is that same number that we showed, that number that was 3 point but this is the weekly percent positive cases. And this has been awesome. This is now at 1.91. This has kind of hovered around, it started a little over 2 and it's hovered around under 2 right now. That means we're doing a lot more testing, but it's coming back at a volume that allows our hospitals to manage it. Because the real issue here is this right here is the other number we want to look at. Now today it's decreasing. It's 22.2. That's the number of new cases that Pinellas County on an average in a 14-day rolling average handles. Now let me just show you, if you can see this chart, it might be a little small on your screen. This just shows you the 14-day average You can see it's 25, on the 25th, it was 22.2. The highest this has gotten, if we go back to April 9th, 10th, and 11th, it was at 24 cases. So at our peak, we were pulling 24 cases a day on a 14-day average. It went down to the 12. And when we first opened the economy, it was at about 11.8. And now it has steadily just kept working up. So to me, that tells, that should tell everybody that the numbers, our healthcare system is managing it, that people are getting tested, they're getting identified, and they're getting the help they need, but it's still getting people sick. So everything we as business community can do to ensure that we are keeping it safe, that we're keeping social distancing, that we're helping as much as we can manage this, the better off we're going to be, because folks are still getting sick from that. So I think that's, so that's how I've been starting these meetings, Mr. Chair, is just kind of really working with people to understand that I think our numbers are looking okay. Our hospitals, our hospital metrics are, capable of handling it, the volumes. So what we've been told by every government layer, from the president to the governor, to county administrator, to the mayor, is as long as these numbers continue to go this way, our economy will continue to open up. So as we have told city council, and I've told my executive committee, and I'll tell my board, is I do believe in the next week or two, you're going to see us as a state start to get to phase 2. We are complete as a state in phase 1, except for tattoo parlors are still under the gun. But we have started to really open up. Now, phase 2 means we start going to 50 people or more, or 50 people or less, and not 10. So and then maybe bars will open up as well. So my belief is, I would say within the next week, you're going to hear the governor start heading us that direction based on the numbers we see. That's my report.
Chris, thank you for that update on the metrics. I think it's important for all of us to remember as we start to be exhausted about taking protective measures, that how important that is to maintaining our businesses open. And that's a good gut check, for that measure. We want to see that next phase, and remembering each of us to keep those measures going is important. Appreciate that. Next on the agenda, recognize Commissioner Charlie Justice to give us an update on the county level.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Chris took a lot of the information I was going to cover to begin with, but let me just share some other stats. He mentioned the governor's moving into full phase 1 for Pinellas and for the rest of the state. There's been some confusion about what that means for what kind of businesses. And really, if nothing else today, I'd love to stress that the county, and specifically the county commission, is not the one that's interpreting the governor's laws and saying, you can be open and you can't be open. We're working with the governor's office and Department of Professional and Business Regulation in order to get clarification. We've had a lot of issues locally, but let me just touch on a few of our numbers that are important to us. We are seeing those numbers that Chris talked about. In Pinellas, we have about 1,100 cases. And we do have 73 deaths in Pinellas County, unfortunately. The thing that we really are trying to focus on is a supermajority of those cases are from our long-term care facilities. And so that's why we've made that a priority. I think we all knew from the beginning that this was going to be the area of focus, the folks that are most vulnerable. And so our emergency operations team has got these work groups together with the State Department of Health, the Area 8 for Agency for Healthcare Administration, which regulates our long-term care facilities, as well as our local EMS folks, as well as the governor's National Guard strike teams for healthcare. So all of these, we've been in almost every single nursing home in Pinellas County. Most of them are doing pretty well, but there are some that you've certainly read about in the paper that they don't have the ability to either care for their patients when they get to a level of severity, or they don't have the ability to isolate their patients if they test positive. So we've actually had some cases in nursing homes where we've helped transport patients that are asymptomatic, but the facility just doesn't have the ability to isolate. So that is our focus. That is the number one area as the numbers, as the governor said, certainly over 90 is much more dangerous than under 65 than our statistics. What we've done for folks similar to St. Pete's Fund, we've been able to secure grants to aid our individuals as well as our local businesses. We have a small business Pinellas Cares grant, and we've got about 4,000 applications that we've received for those. We've about 500, I think, have gone through the process, and about $2 million have been spread among those small businesses. That's for local brick and mortar businesses that have been impacted by COVID. That was round one. Anytime you create something brand new and you think you've covered the bases, immediately after you've done round one, you hear from the folks that didn't qualify and that are legitimately in need. And so round two will be coming as we continue to tweak those criteria. We want to make sure that we get help to folks that need it, but not spread it so thin to where it's not meaningful. We also have an individual assistance grant. That's $4,000 for a person that's been impacted. And about 8,000 people have inquired about that. 1,000 folks are in the process of getting approved. And we've approved about $1.5 million to get out to folks for that. I did want to, one of the other, I know I'm kind of a little trying to shuffle my notes here a little this morning. One of the other boards I serve on is the Area Agency on Aging of Pasco Pinellas. And we received a grant to help folks. We've been able to partner with about a dozen restaurants in Pinellas and Pasco to serve 18,000 meals to seniors that have been asked by the governor to stay home to supplement our typical Meals on Wheels program. So it's kind of a win-win. It helps get meals and food to folks who are a little more tied to their homes, but it also helps to fund some of those restaurants that have been struggling as well. So Anne-Marie Winter, our executive director out there, is doing incredible work to partner our restaurants, and we appreciate the restaurants that have stepped up to do that. That's kind of it as far as the COVID. We do have, like Chris showed you, the database, which is really, really good information on a day-to-day basis. As soon as we get it, we input it. Pinellascounty.org, it's on the front page there. Again, what Chris was talking about is really important. We watch that hospitalization rate, and right now we've got about 26% of our hospital beds available as elective surgery has returned. We have about that same percent of ICU beds. So we're managing it okay. When we get that wave from the long-term care facilities, certainly that has an impact. If we get 20 patients, 30 patients in one night, that certainly has a chance to dramatically impact. But something that we all worried about at the very beginning of this, which we're doing really well, is we have about 80% of our ventilators available should we reach that level of severity for our patients. So that's the general COVID response. We're going to see a hit in our general fund as we start our budget process in a few weeks here. And we're going to see a hit in our gas tax fund. And we're going to see a really big hit in our CVB, our TDC tourist fund, which helps funds our marketing for the destination, as well as some capital projects that a lot of folks are interested in. So with that, I'll leave it there. And if we have time for questions, I don't know if you have the other electeds coming on, but I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be with you this morning and share that update. And again, Pinellascounty.org is a way to get a hold of me should you ever need assistance with any county matter.
Charlie, we appreciate the update and appreciate the picture in the background of the peer approach. That's certainly a project we're all looking forward to getting open. That's a few months old too. That picture there, you can still see dirt turning there in the background. Yes, it's coming along quickly. We do have a couple questions from our past chair, Ann McMullen, asking where and how are we able to isolate COVID victims from the nursing homes when they are being extracted? Where are we placing those?
Those folks are in the hospitals. That's why that hospital rate is so important. And our hospitals have been incredible partners for us. And it's based on a geography. It's not all at one hospital, but they are doing a good job of isolating those patients. And so that's where they're going. The really need is some of these ALFs, some of these facilities, if you look at them, they're pretty small. They don't have the ability to, if they have 3 or 4 patients, they don't have the ability to kind of close off an area. And that's why a lot of those are transported. Right. It's not only not only that, but some obviously have a severity level that are important, but a lot of it is simply that the facility doesn't have the ability to isolate, whereas a hospital can dedicate some space for it, especially with the availability of space right now.
Appreciate that. I think that's something that's been unique to state of Florida in general as well. Next question from Brandon Johnson. Is there an update on the Retina assistance that you mentioned that was mentioned last meeting, and where and how do residents, landlords, managers find more info?
Again, if you go to pinellascounty.org, on the very top of our website is a COVID button. And if you press that, it'll take you to aid for assistance or assistance for individuals, assistance for business. It's also the link to that data information. Frequently asked questions are linked to the latest governor's info, but everything about how to apply is right there. Our program to assist individuals, we already had a small program that we operate through 211. And so that was a little easier to transform. The program to help businesses, we kind of had to build from scratch. So our folks, Mike Mydell and folks at Economic Development, have kind of built that from scratch. But again, everything is through our county website.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Charlie. To move to our city update, I'd like to recognize Councilwoman Gina Driscoll.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We have a new, I guess you would call it a marketing campaign, but it's really a new way of doing things that the Chamber has been such a great partner with, and that's the St. Pete Way. I think this is just an incredible effort that the city has put together, and you guys have been so helpful, just with keeping in mind that this is actually going to be a long-term challenge for a lot of people, and that if we're able to put our health precautions first and really just get used to a new way of doing things, a new way of going out and about, a new way of doing business, it's really the way forward that's going to mean long-term success in fighting this battle. So the Deputy Mayor did a fantastic presentation for us, showing us all of the different ways that they're going to be promoting the St. Pete Way in artistic ways, by handing out different kinds of swag that says the St. Pete Way. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I don't know how much you guys have already seen this, since we're working so closely with the Chamber on these Restart St. Pete efforts. But I think it's really a fantastic way to approach this as we reopen. I've been very happy with the way that the mayor has responded to this and really joined in with the county and the state level precautions and orders to make sure that we're all going about this very slowly, and yet giving businesses an opportunity to reopen again, and for the general public to be able to go out and about and do business in St. Pete again. The Fighting Chance Fund has been incredibly successful. So far, we have been able to help hundreds of businesses with those grants. And I know that the administration is currently looking at ways that they can expand the eligibility so that more businesses can take advantage of that. I have been advocating for the eligibility to include home-based businesses, and in particular our home-based childcare businesses, because if you think about it, we really need to have all of our childcare businesses operating so that people can go back to work. And it's just an incredibly important part of our economy, if you think about it. So the last time I spoke with the deputy mayor, I know they were looking at ways that they can do that expansion. I think a lot of this is the city wants to make sure that they do have enough money for everyone, and that we are going about it in the right way, because it is, um, it's we have an emergency situation, and yet we still want to make sure that we're making smart decisions. They're also looking at ways that we might be able to help some of our smaller franchise businesses. We have several in St. Pete that if you didn't know any better, you would not guess that it was an actual franchise, because it's a small single location, maybe specialty products, things like that. And those are folks who are really hurting from this too, and are not getting assistance from some big faceless corporate entity. So I in my conversations with the mayor and the deputy mayor, regarding the Fighting Chance Fund, it has been really focused on how can we get the money to more people so that more of our businesses can survive. I've talked for a few minutes here. I want to make sure that I'm covering what you guys want to cover. So are there questions or specific things that you guys would like to know about this morning?
Appreciate that, Gina. A couple of takeaways. I appreciate you mentioning that walking kind of hand in hand with the chamber and the initiative, and just appreciate your collaboration, with that. I think having an open door and voice with you and the other council members has really been a strong part of our navigation, and thank you for that. And as a father of 3, I appreciate the childcare part. A couple questions coming in. At what phase, from another parent, Brooks, is what phase will playground in the city reopen?
That's a great question. I have been getting that one quite a bit, and I know that Parks and Recreation is looking at how they can do that safely. I spoke with our Leisure Services Administrator, Mike Jeffries, on Saturday. We were actually together volunteering for Feeding Tampa Bay, and Commissioner Justice was there as well for their mega pantry at Tropicana Field. Keeping playground equipment clean is, of course, a priority, and we have to make sure that we have the staff to be able to do that as frequently as possible. And also, when children play, they are very social creatures, and they want to be close to each other. They want to, have physical contact too. And so the question becomes, how can we have the playground equipment open for everyone to enjoy, but still make sure that our children are staying safe and healthy? And that's a tough one. I think it is going to happen within the next week or so. That's my guess, just from talking with Mike. But again, it's a pretty big responsibility to make sure that the children in our city are staying safe. So I think they're taking some extra precautions with that.
Well, thank you. Building on Charlie Justice's background picture, we have another question from Anne asking for that question you probably heard 1,000 times, the update on the pier opening. Working on the pier approach myself, I've heard some rumblings about potential soft opening or portions of it opening, but could you give us any inkling on what that might be?
I have not received an update on the pier. We actually have that on our agenda for the June 4th City Council meeting. Chris Balestra will be providing an update on the pier on some of the specific elements in their progress, as well as just an overall update. We have not, there hasn't been a new opening date announced yet. I know that now the dream is to be able to have it open by July 4th, because that would just put an exclamation point on a grand celebration. But what might that look like? From the conversations that I've had, it sounds like it might be more of a soft opening. just a very limited capacity at the beginning. And, it could be that if we can't do something for July 4th, we really want the whole city to be able to come together to celebrate the opening of the pier. And so my thought is, we can do that. I mean, I worked at Disney for 9 years, and we opened new attractions or even new parks months in advance of the actual grand opening celebration. You do that soft opening and build things up. And I kind of see that's where we're headed with the pier. For all we know, it could be New Year's Eve when we do the actual official celebration. But I think we will be looking at trying to do a soft opening in certain areas as they're ready, just to be able to see this through and get some folks out there enjoying it. It gives us more space to enjoy. And, we're working with Colliers to make sure that operationally it makes sense as well. So stay tuned. And I would definitely suggest watching our Riveting City Council meeting on June 4th. And that's when we'll get our next public update from Chris. So might have some more information by then. I hope so.
Gina, appreciate that. Appreciate your time and your work collaborating with the chamber. And thank you for coming on for this update today. Appreciate that. Moving to next on our agenda to the state update, I'd like to recognize Representative Ben Diamond.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, everyone. Good morning. Great to see you all today. And I want to pay a special thanks and shout out to Charlie and to Gina, Commissioner Justice and Councilwoman. You all have been doing a great job, and we really appreciate your leadership and the collaboration that you've brought to the work in this challenge. I'll give a brief update on the state's response. I know you've had Sarah Brandis and other people come in last month's meeting. Obviously we've been facing two existential threats simultaneously here. We had to deal with the threat to our public health system. We didn't want to have our health system totally overwhelmed. But at the same time, we are recognizing that we've been facing an existential threat in terms of shutting down our economy and the impact that's having, and will continue to have. And so we obviously cannot endure a completely closed economy for 12 months or 18 months or however long this is going to last. So I think what the governor has been trying to do is to develop an integrated response, one that recognizes both of these threats and one that tries to find some way to control the disease while rebuilding economic activity in the state. And Chris has sort of summarized where we are in terms of the stages of that. I want to talk a little bit about the problems I'm seeing specifically with regard to the state's response and the issues that are coming into my office. And people talk about, well, how are we going to get back to normal? And I think one of the things this has shown us is we really can't go back. We can't think of it as going back to normal because, going back to where we were is sort of why we were fundamentally so vulnerable to this situation in the first place. It's more about how we fix this moving forward. And candidly, a lot of the collaboration and spirit that I've seen in local government just hasn't been there in the same level in Tallahassee and Washington, and that I think has hindered somewhat our state's response. When this first started, I had previously worked in the state CFO's office during the last recession, so I was aware of the fact that most of our state agencies actually report to the whole Florida cabinet, and they oversee all of our states, many of our state's most important funds. I've been encouraging the state CFO, the governor, to get the cabinet together to, sort of review all that and provide the oversight, provide the type of leadership that we're seeing here from our county commission, from our city council. That is finally going to happen. The cabinet has not met since February 4th, but that is finally going to happen later this week. I've been very, very focused on the impact this is going to have on our state budget. You know, I know as a member of the State House Appropriations Committee that the impact this is going to have on our budget, both on the state level and on local levels, is going to be profound. You know, we fund over 75% of our general revenue in our state budget from sales tax. And so, that's not a secret. I mean, I sent a letter right away to the CFO and to the governor saying we need to have a meeting of our state revenue estimating conference so that we can start getting our hands around the budget impact of this. We passed a budget for fiscal year 2021 for the state of Florida. It's a $93 billion budget. It's the largest budget in the history of the state, but it was based upon a revenue projection that was done last fall, pre-COVID-19, right? So we know those numbers are no good. The Revenue Estimating Conference has not met yet. They have taken the position that they are still waiting for more data. From my perspective, I'm anxious. I would like at least a range, but they are still sort of waiting for the complete set of data to come in. But I think it's clear that whenever they do meet, and hopefully that's going to be very, very soon, there's going to be a significant hole that we're going to have to figure out how to fill. And from my perspective, that is going to have to come from additional support from Congress. We had an initial round of appropriations to state and local governments in the first CARES Act. But I think that what we're going to see is that we're going to need a whole bunch more support there. And I've been advocating for that. I sent a letter to Senator Scott, Senator Rubio, and I've been disappointed, candidly, to see that fall into this sort of typical kind of partisan world up there in DC of, well, I'm in a red state, you're in a blue state. I mean, we're the United States when we face crises like this. And from my perspective, you look at the bills that have been introduced in Congress that would provide additional support that, again, as a budget writer, I'm pretty sure we're going to need, even though I don't have my revenue estimating conference data yet. And, the bills that have been introduced in Congress that I would ask this chamber to support, because I think it's going to be really important in terms of supporting our local governments and our state government, are bipartisan bills. There's a bill that's in the Senate that was filed by Senator Cassidy. He's a Republican from Louisiana, along with Senator Menendez. He's a Democrat from New Jersey. That bill comes off of a bipartisan recommendation from the National Governors Association as to what they're going to need. Governor Hogan from Maryland, who's Republican, Governor Cuomo, obviously New York Democrat, they're all coming together and saying, hey guys, this is what we're going to need. So we sort of have to get past that sort of typical Washington partisanship in this instance and find a way to support our state and local governments. Obviously, we've had just a very difficult situation with our state unemployment situation. It was never really set up to work properly, in my opinion. My office is still inundated with calls from folks in our community that have been unable to access benefits. Obviously, we're facing this unprecedented crisis. In fairness, I don't think anybody would have ever anticipated, what we're facing. The April numbers that the Labor Department just announced, 20 million Americans have lost their jobs. But also, you had an agency that had 3 state auditor general audits finding that the system that we built, that taxpayers spent $70-some million building, that system wasn't working, and those audits weren't corrected. And so there's a lot of management issues there that I think many of my colleagues think we need to look into. We have called for the need to go back to work. We're local government is working at the city level, the county level. I think that the legislature needs to be working on addressing some of these issues as it relates to the budget, as it relates to providing more robust support in our unemployment system, providing more support for our small businesses, hopefully expanding our small business emergency loan program. And then, I have other ideas that I'd like to see included in a special session discussion that I think are not necessarily realistic if they don't have the supportive leadership, like expanding Medicaid. But I think that there are a number of issues, at least on the budget, that we should all be able to come together and work on. I have, like Commissioner Justice, been very focused on the past couple of weeks here locally, not just on the unemployment claims issues and trying to get people help and attention from the Department of Economic Opportunity, but also on the issues with our long-term care facilities. I had good calls at the end of last week with Secretary Mayhew from ACA and our State Surgeon General, Dr. Rifkes, just to discuss those issues. I think they're really trying, as Charlie said, to be in those facilities and to address issues early. They have now, they're getting good collaboration from our Tampa Bay hospitals. They said they've now set up a separate facility in Polk County to take residents who are COVID positive, but not yet sick enough to be hospitalized, to isolate them. So I thought that was a positive development. But obviously, you know, the situation that we've seen in many of those facilities, you know, unless you catch an outbreak early, you can have a very, very deadly situation. And so I have a call later today with Dr. Cho to sort of follow back up on some of what I learned from talking with Secretary Mayhew and Dr. Rifkes. But in general, I think, you know, I'm pushing for us to go back to Tallahassee, get back to work, for the cabinet to start meeting again, for the revenue estimating conference to start meeting. You know, one of the first things the governor did, which I thought was great in the midst of this incredible emergency, was to say that local governments have the ability to meet virtually. We're all meeting virtually. I've attended many of the City of St. Pete's meetings, you know, just on mute, and Commissioner Justice watched watch some of the commission's meetings, and you know, we can get work done, and we should be doing the same thing when it comes to state government. You know, there's too many people in our community that need help right now for us to be sort of trying to just kick the can down the road and get past November. So happy to stop there and take any questions or hear any feedback. Thanks, Jason. Oh, and by the way, I'm all in favor of the childcare and the playgrounds. Matt saw me downtown trying to give Christina a break with my 3 kids, and I wholeheartedly said, whatever the council needs and the commission needs to get that done, you got my full support. So thanks.
That's collaboration in real time there. Yeah, we appreciate that, Ben. Yeah, a couple quick questions, and we have a pretty full agenda. There's one question about other avenues for unemployment applications and assistance, you know, potentially, you know, locally or hard copies. Is there a workaround the internet on that one?
So there's no workaround. I'm asking anybody who's having difficulty, which is basically everyone who's trying to access their benefits, to send me an email at my state email, which is ben.diamond@myfloridahouse.gov. We're then submitting those constituent problems to the agency. They're getting sent to some type of escalated review department. The challenge I'm having is that, candidly, I don't really have anybody yet. We don't really have anybody yet in the agency that has access to claims data that can talk to us. So we can call up and say, hey, where are we on Mrs. Smith's application? The legislative affairs team at that agency is candidly so overwhelmed that they can tell us that Mrs. Smith's claim is being reviewed by the escalated review team, but they can't tell us what the issues are. And that's obviously frustrating. You know, it's also frustrating for the business owners. You know, I've had a number of calls from people who, you know, small business owners, restaurant people, a lot of restaurant people really, who have built relationships, you know, with their employees, with their bartenders or whatever, and they're just sort of shocked by this. And, you know, when the governor says, well, you know, most of these people that aren't getting their benefits, it's because they filled out the information wrong or there's something incorrect. Well, you know, when you actually work through the system, it is not you can't fill it out. I mean, you get error messages along the way. So and then when you try to call to fix it, you're getting you're getting put on hold and not really getting through to people. So they know it's broken. They're trying to fix it, but we're several months into this now, and we just have to keep trying to help people. But the short answer is send me an email with the folks that need help. We'll send it into DEO. It will get into this escalated review department. We are now getting back, hearing back from the constituents who were then calling saying, well, we did get a week of benefits or whatever in some circumstances. So we are seeing some movement. Thanks, Jason.
Appreciate that. We'll definitely pump that out to our navigators. So don't be surprised if you get quite a few emails. Appreciate being open to that navigation yourself. A couple quick questions, and then we need to move forward. From Anne requesting budget options, depending on the level of federal support, where do you see the potential impact in those cuts? How to fill those deficits? I know that's kind of a broad question, but in general terms, where do you think we will be feeling the impact in sectors?
Well, I'll go first. The short answer is I don't know yet. I mean, I think that we're going to have to see the depth or the extent of the revenue gap. We're going to have to consider how much money we have in our budget stabilization fund to put toward that gap. But this idea that this is like any other recession, that this is somehow a normal recession, and we're quote unquote just going to have to face some tough choices. I mean, that is not. This is bigger than that. I mean, that's what I'm trying to help people. I think there's just a political sense in Tallahassee that, well, let's just try to Band-Aid this thing through the November elections, and then we'll try to look at where we are in the budget year. And the problem with that, from my perspective, is, then you're 2 quarters into a new budget year. So, I mean, I think that we're going to have to look at cuts. We're going to have to look at new sources of revenue. But I think we're going to need assistance from Congress, because they can really help us here, and they need to.
I appreciate that insight. One question to all the government officials from our CEO, Chris Steinecker, on contact tracing exposure notification. Does any government official have any updates in that regards?
Well, I can tell you from the county level, we are working with Dr. Cho at the Department of Health, and they're really starting to dig into that process. But we don't have a set program or plan yet. It's going to be a big challenge in an area like Pinellas and Tampa Bay, where there's so much movement around the area. But Dr. Cho and our emergency operations team that is an area that they're working on right now.
Appreciate that, Charlie. With that, Ben, just want to say thank you again, taking your time to give us an update, and you're truly leading the charge on getting our legislation running at the same speed, even virtually, moving forward. And we really appreciate that, and appreciate your collaboration with us, in particular on advocacy. You've had an open door, and that's greatly appreciated. With that, we'd like to move and recognize our own advocacy update from Matt Lettner.
Thanks, Jason. Good morning to everybody. Just want to touch base before we get into our committee reports, and just kind of give you an overview of our advocacy program right now. I want to share my screen real quick, and it's this one. So this gives you kind of a update of what the advocacy program looks like right now. So you've got our meeting dates as they hold right now. Got a couple ad hoc committees with our legislative and our waterfront. You can see our chairs on this, and I can email this out to anyone that wants it. But the focus that we've had on things is really kind of discussion that we'll have towards the end of our reports. But you can see the things that we've been taking care of, especially on the transportation committee. We're focused on the regional connectivity, and then in the urban mobility, housing, land use projects, etc. But really want to point out, when we get to Kevin and the sustainability committee, is trying to find a focus there. I feel like we can do more with that committee, maybe expand some scope, what have you, and would love some input from our public policy council for that. So, I just wanted to kind of frame this before we get into the updates that we'll start here in a second. So, just wanted you all to see that. Are there any questions before we jump into the committee reports? Doesn't look like it. So, Jason, I'll just go ahead and turn it back over to you.
And I will say just a thanks to Matt. I know working closely with him, taking on the navigation role, he's still answering every advocacy call that comes on both roles. So he's really just working twice as much. Recognizing, going to the committee reports, transportation, with the transportation committee update, which fortunately this last week or so have been a couple weeks been able to be involved with myself with their panel, and just want to say that it was a very exciting, invigorating conversation, that I think it was very progressive in how it was formatted and discussed and curated. So appreciate that, and look forward to moving forward with some creative options with that. So recognize Brooks Wallington, please.
All right, thanks, Jason. Appreciate pitching me and talking up our committee. As it was mentioned last month, we sort of blew up our normal committee meeting. We turned it into a brainstorming session, and we really had about 25 participants that it was sort of narrowly focused around getting feedback from those participants. It was a moderated committee meeting, so it really helped the flow, get the ideas going. It was moderated by a gentleman named Topher Morrison, and he started out the meeting really by asking a simple question to us, which was, what is transportation? And ultimately, transportation is mobility. And he took the meeting basically from there, and we focused on smaller circles and expanding it into larger circles within the region. So a lot of the conversation was really focused on St. Pete and how we can focus on transportation here in St. Petersburg. So a lot of really great ideas came out of that. And I don't want to say we were forward thinking in it, but our meeting did happen before the city shut Bayshore down, and that was a recommendation that came from our brainstorming session. So I think somebody was tapped into that call that we were on. So, right, Gina? Yeah. We focused on a lot. I think our call was an hour long. It probably could have went for 3 hours easily. It was just a very robust conversation. I do want to focus on the fact that we came out of the meeting with 3 sort of major ideas that I think we could implement sooner rather than later. And that was, we brought up the Central Avenue trolley. I think we could really expand on that, possibly make that a totally free service, like the Looper. We see that the Looper is before COVID-19, the Looper's a ridership was just going up and up and up, and I think it had a lot to do with the fact that that's a free service. So if we could, sort of gear that Central Avenue trolley and expand that out and make that a free service as well. We talked about how successful the Cross Bay Ferry was. And we'd like to see sort of a ferry service expanded to connect the region a little bit better. And then the last major topic that we talked about was merging the transit organizations. We see other cities, and it seems like they have a much larger organization that is the umbrella for all of the smaller regions, and having one main transit organization helping the entire region, we thought would be a really good idea. And basically of those 3 ideas, that was essentially the meat of our conversation for our meeting. There was a lot of other ideas. I think, Jason, you've got one that you're gonna touch on a little bit later. So that's my update for now.
Thank you, Brooks. Appreciate that. And I'd add there was a great discussion about micromobility and transportation hubs and parking, maximums instead of minimums in our downtown, and how to potentially structure that in the future to really stimulate micromobility. So some of those ideas were very creative, and I think the format was great. Do we have any questions from the group? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Brooks, for that update.
Jason, we did get one question about the scooter pilot program. That might be better directed to Gina,
Okay.
because I know that it's been kind of put on hold for COVID, but they want to move forward soon. Councilwoman, do you have any insight on that?
I sure do. I was asking Evan Morey just a week or so ago, where are the scooters? You said by the end of May we'd have something in front of us, and the next city council agenda came out and it still wasn't on there. So I was hoping that we could actually get them going a little more quickly, because we didn't have as many cars on the streets, at this time. So I thought it might be actually an excellent time to try to move forward. But they do have some concerns about the cleanliness, and we had that discussion. I said, look, that's not temporary. The companies and the city need to work together to find a way to make sure that the scooters are clean. We still have bike share out there, so why not have the scooters as well? I'm very anxious to get this going. City staff has 3 vendors that they will be bringing forward for city council approval in July, is what I'm told. But I did ask if there's a way to get it in before that. If you want to move it through in June, it'll still take a little bit of time for the scooter companies to get into place. So I've been encouraging quick forward movement on that. I do know that there are, of the 3 vendors that are up for approval, one of them actually has the kind of scooter that has a seat. So I was happy to see that, because I actually saw those in action when I was in San Antonio, Texas last year for the National League of Cities convention. And it's a great option for folks who are a bit unsure about actually using a traditional e-scooter. And then, for some of our older folks who might have balance issues but still want to give it a try, it might be a great way to ease into the scooter experience. So I'm super excited. I know we're definitely going to have them going sometime in July, and hopefully we'll be pushing this through for approval in June. That's the latest I have on e-scooters.
We appreciate that, Gina. This is something certainly on the micromobility that was spoke about a lot, and I think we can encourage personal cleaning between uses, hopefully. One question, we do have Steve Westfall on the call. There was a mention of the closure on Bayshore, and whether he saw an direct effect on that closure to business or availability of parking.
In terms of the closure on Bayshore, it's that there's that small stretch from 2nd to 5th Avenues North.
I was just asking, we think we have Steve Westfall on the line, so I was just going to see if he had a direct feeling of that. And maybe he's not hearing at the moment. Oh, there you go, Steve.
Hi, Steve.
Office on Wheels. I was taking off because I'm riding my racer now.
Steve, are you on or no? All right. Well,
I think that he's monitoring the meeting. He's not.
Yeah. I think we'll let that come back to that later. But Gina, thank you for your report, and thank you for working so closely with us. I know they mentioned that they've had just a clear line to you, and we greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, and I definitely want to hear more from you guys as we move forward, because we are trying some new things out there between the e-scooter share, but also, the partial closure of Bayshore. I want to know what you guys think about that, and what you see and what you hear from other businesses, and then also how that might apply to closing sections of other streets throughout our city, and how that might be good or bad for our businesses. So I look forward to hearing feedback from you guys, and happy to answer questions offline if anyone wants to give me a call.
I appreciate that, Gina. Stay tuned to the end of the meeting. That's a part of our new discussion. So moving next on our agenda, we'd like to recognize from the Housing and Land Use Development Committee update from Jay Miller.
Morning, everybody. We've been quiet over the last 3 months. Some of the issues that we have been tracking for the last year are twofold. One is the coastal high hazard change, the proposed changes to coastal high hazard zoning that would permit certain property owners that fall within the coastal high hazard zone a mechanism for applying for a variance, which under certain circumstances, if they upgrade the standards of their construction, may permit changes to zoning and residential density. And that had been tabled by council during this COVID period until they could begin to hold public hearings again. My understanding is that's about to happen and be reintroduced to council. Council Member Driscoll, do you want to talk about that? That's an issue in which the committee and this committee and the board have supported the proposed changes.
Yes, thank you. I did get an email over the weekend to let City Council know that we do have the public hearings scheduled now. So those will be starting up in June. Let's see, on June 11th, that's when we have public hearings are at 5 p.m. and that will be our vote. It's the first hearing on whether to change the comprehensive plan and send that to the State Department of Economic Opportunity and others for review and comment. So we have that one. So that is for the comp plan. And I think you guys know there are the two parts of this. We will also have the first reading for the building code and LDR changes. So that will be the first reading, and that public hearing date that we'll be voting to set will be August 20th. So first round on June 11th for that, second round and final on August 20th. So we do have finally some forward movement with that.
Thank you, Gina. We will, at our next call, be organizing how the chamber will communicate its position at the public hearings. But if any of the individual members have strong interest in this issue, you now know what the dates are for the public hearings this summer. The other issue that we've been tracking over the last year was the proposal for linkage fees. And that it's our understanding that that proposal has been tabled indefinitely during this period of economic downturn. And that is a fee that we were very concerned about and we're not supportive of. So will while not excited about the reason for the postponement of consideration, we're happy about the result, at least for now. I will say that I personally have heard some rumblings in the community from various not-for-profits that are involved in providing and promoting affordable housing to find other ways to generate new affordable housing in the community. And so I'm sure we'll be discussing that during the rest of the year. Matt, I don't know if there's any other issues that you want to bring to the attention of the members.
No, you covered it pretty well, Jay. I know that you and Jillian and I are going to talk later today or tomorrow about that, and then we're going to have obviously our June meeting just in time before the council meeting on the coastal high hazard on the 11th. So, anyone that would like to help with that, please reach out to me, and we'll get you on that advocating team.
Okay, Jay, appreciate the update and the work on that. Gina, I do appreciate some of the endeavors for housing options that are being pushed along, especially the 22nd Street corridor and Tangerine Plaza. Recently, they've increased the city's support of housing as part of those developments, and I think that's a good public-private partnership and an avenue for future options for housing and workforce housing moving forward. Moving on, I would like to have our legislative update from either Jason Rodriguez or Albie Kaminsky.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Can everybody hear me?
All right, Albie.
All right. Good morning, everybody. And thank you, Council Member and Commissioner and Future Leader Diamond, for providing a lot of our reports of a legislative committee. In all seriousness, I definitely miss seeing all of you in person, but I think it's been pretty nice to have these meetings and actually have our elected officials on these meetings and be here and providing updates from all different levels of our government. So it's really, really helpful on that. As Matt was saying too, we kind of meet as an ad hoc committee and meet as needed. We have not met last week. We have been monitoring everything with the budget. So thank you, Leader Diamond, for giving a brief little update as where we stand up in Tallahassee and tracking our projects as it relates to the budget. But we've also spoke to some of our colleagues across the Bay over in Tampa, and just had a couple of preliminary conversations, kind of brainstorming a little bit more too of what next year would look like, and hoping that everything goes according to plan. But kind of putting on the hat of practicing what we preach on a focus on regionalism. So we would obviously like to maintain that our priorities here in St. Pete, and I think, as Chris, our fearless leader, likes to say, our funky St. Pete vibe. But I'd like to continue something like that as we move forward for our planning for our advocacy trip up to Tallahassee this upcoming year, but also incorporating a little bit more of a regional component. So again, just some brief little points that we're brainstorming right now. We've got some great leaders on both sides of the aisle and in both sides of the Bay too. So definitely able to celebrate our leaders and bring home some victories to St. Pete, Pinellas County, and the region as a whole. So I think that's kind of where we stand right now. Again, thank you for those reports to the council member, the commissioner, and Leader Diamond. And if anybody has any questions, let me know.
All right, do we have any questions in the group?
Jason, I'll just jump in there. As we've done in the last several years since I've been at the chamber, we try and start working on our legislative agenda in the summer before the upcoming session. See what our wins were from the year before, see what we need to fight for again. So once the governor signs the budget, I think that's going to give us a signal onto what we need to, start with in the hopper for next year. But, for any of you that are on this call or, are friends with other chamber members that normally have asks of the legislature, please have them reach out to me. We'll send it out in the newsletter. We'll do the Survey Monkey. We'll do all that, but please have them reach out to me, because the earlier that we can have things that we're working on, we're vetting, the more successful we're going to be in Tallahassee. So just want to please have you guys give me that information. The sooner the better. I know that I've started working with Councilwoman Driscoll on something, last year about this time, and we had some success with it. So those are really important for us to get through. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Matt. Thank you, Albie, for that update and keeping us in the know there. Appreciate that. Moving on to our downtown waterfront master plan, I want to recognize Ross Prevel. Ross, do we have you?
I'm not sure if we have Ross. I've not seen him on the call, and I don't recognize. I don't see his phone number here.
Well, we can, yeah, Matt. We can recognize a little bit on the master plan. Obviously, the implementation of the master plan with the peer approach, peer district is moving right along. Actually, the bit closure of Bayshore Drive was part of the master plan as well. That was identified as a convertible street and was actually in some of the plans of the peer approach that we worked on as well. So that's an ongoing discussion that we will have continue to have input on, and this will be a test case. And then with recently with the marina discussion, Matt, if you'd like to step in with that.
Yeah, happy to. Actually, I was fortunate to learn a little bit more about the marina discussion yesterday. So the city is moving forward, I guess, kind of in a part way with a developer, a marina developer called Safe Harbor Development. That is different than Safe Harbor Marinas, which operates the Harborage, just south of downtown, south of USF. So the city is going to, I just went to council this past week and asked permission to enter into basically a due diligence period with the marina operator. And so they're going to have a certain period, I can't believe it was 90 or 120 days, and Councilwoman Driscoll, please correct me on that. But
it's 120 days.
120 days. So yeah. They've got 120 days to come with, hard money and, a full contract for services for the 5-year plan. Because if everyone knows anything that's along the waterfront, unless it goes to referendum, the maximum lease is for 5 years. So the plan is for Safe Harbor Development to fix the docks, put in new docks, put in other amenities, to bring our marina up to world-class status. With that comes an increase in fees for those that are docking there. So no more waterfront property for less than $200 a month in downtown St. Pete. But yeah, so that's the crux there. There were some concerns that were voiced by several folks about Safe Harbor Development, in that they're world-class facility operator, but they are mainly in the lake marinas, not open water marinas, and that there would be a lack of reciprocity. If with the other two marina developers, hey, I'm in Fort Lauderdale and I want to go up to the west coast of Florida. Oh, great, there's a marina in St. Pete that I can go use. That doesn't cost me anything more, and I can go check out St. Pete. The Safe Harbor Development, people would have to put their boats onto a trailer to get to open water to then get to St. Pete. So that was one of the concerns that was voiced. But the mayor certainly had his reasons for going with Safe Harbor Development, and we're just looking forward to something happening with that marina and having other people pay for the upgrades instead of the roughly $50 million it would have cost the city to do that. So happy to answer any questions on that if anyone has anyone.
Just one added item, my plug, Gina, is that as that becomes less affordable, that the other problem or ramification of that is derelict boats and liveaboards in places like Bogaciga Bay, coming loose and not being monitored. So that would be my other thing that we coincide, that those efforts to improve our facilities with also, how do we address those other conditions?
Right. I'm so happy that you brought that up. I've actually been working with Representative Diamond, Senator Rousseau, Representative Webb, and the FWC about having some stronger rules in place regarding our derelict and abandoned boats. It is a problem already in many of our marine areas, and it's a problem that would only get worse if we have a reduction in affordable places for people to have a boat. Unfortunately, we did have a vessel bill that was sponsored by Senator Rousseau and Representative Webb this past session that did not make it through, but I'm already doing some work on a game plan for next time around to see what adjustments we can make that will get us to yes this time and have some meaningful changes to the way that cities and counties are able to address derelict and abandoned boats in our waterways. On top of that, we have been working with FWC to make changes to their policy through administrative rule, which doesn't require legislation, but does put in place some things that our own local marine PD units can do to address that problem. So by working on that type of legislation on the state level and then seeing what we can do locally, which isn't much, but we can work, with the folks in Tallahassee to make things better. If we're working on that now, by the time we have a new marina in place, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to manage that transition that will inevitably be taking place in the client mix of the municipal marina. Does that make sense?
Gina, I appreciate that update. Well, we're definitely going to continue that discussion offline. I'm happy to get involved with that one.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. If we don't have any other questions for that, I'd like to keep moving to a sustainability committee update from recognizing Kevin Hennessy.
Jason, Steve Westfall, am I allowed to speak at this meeting?
Yes, Steve, we were trying to recognize you earlier, but sorry, we
I was supporting
connect there.
I had to mute while I was supporting my local downtown bicycle vendor. I'm sorry I missed that about the barricades, but from what I saw on the chat, it looked like you all addressed it. I mean, the park did stay relatively empty. I was surprised how quiet it was, but in fairness, a lot of the water parks were, the waterfront park was quieter than usual. I think they went to the beaches, but when I took photographs and sent them to Chris this morning, and of the lack of pedestrian use, I think there was just some confusion as to, is it closed? I mean, if you're going to do that, and from this restaurateur who does look at that as our overflow parking, in the chat you can see my response, and the guest did tell me that they missed the parking and the accessibility, and I hear with the waterfront plan that may go to a closed sometime situation, but I can't stress enough that the lifeblood for our parking in the downtown Beach Drive area. So probably gone too long-winded on that, but on the closure. But I'd like to address this marina situation, if I could, Jason. Can I have just 50
yeah, if you could, 60 seconds, that'd be great.
30 probably at the best.
Okay.
I get a little concerned when I hear that the group that does the lakefront has a restaurant vendor, and Margaritaville, to cut to the chase, might be a restaurant that's being. I'm first off curious about any restaurants that are entertained for the Demon's Landing area. I'd like to be kept in the loop on that. And secondly, I think you guys are on the right track, because I can't wait to see those boats that have like 9 inches of barnacles become. I'm a boater. When I go past Fresco's on my bike at 11 o'clock every weekend, there's people waiting to use those 6 or 8 slips. I can't encourage you enough to get some economic. I look at it as a waterfront parking lot. You know, my waterfront restaurant on the beach, when I put those 50 spaces in at the pub, we had significant increase in our sales. So for whatever that's worth, I encourage you to get some access for the family boater that wants to come downtown and spend his money. And there's plenty of spaces and opportunity for us to do that along that waterfront. And so thanks for letting me speak, and I'm all done. Okay.
Steve, appreciate the update. Especially your input on the ground, kind of front lines, and all the efforts that you've had to reopen and keep staff and community moving is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Anything about those restaurants, Gina? Do you know what's part of that proposal? I'm kind of late to the game here.
Hi, Steve. Just quickly, I'll let you know that the developer has indicated that they would like to consider a cafe or restaurant of some kind with no further detail. And I made it very clear that we need to see that detail, and that
Gina,
probably
this is the guy that watched the last restaurant go from 300 seats to 450. And I'm just begging for our waterfront to be what our forefathers allowed it to be, and that's access for all the residents. And so for whatever that's worth, I would ask you to mindfully keep an eye on the size of that economic development.
Yes, absolutely, Steve. I'm right there with you. And I'd love to have a call with you later on, just the two of us, to chat more about that.
I appreciate what you do. Welcome.
Yeah, I'll call you.
All right, thank you both. Appreciate that. I'd like to move and again recognize Sustainability Committee update from Kevin Hennessy.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I join everyone in thanking you for having this Zoom call, and particularly the public officials being able to be here today and share their information. As Matt alluded at the outset, the Sustainability Committee is in a kind of a reformation mode. Myself and my vice chair or co-chair were installed right before the COVID struck, and so we haven't had a meeting, a formal meeting, but we have had most recently a call with both Matt and Chris to really focus on what we're looking for in terms of a mission. We're looking to expand the Sustainability Committee so that it's not looked at as focusing solely on environmental issues, but truly on resilience issues, and with the COVID crisis, to see if there isn't a role for that committee in being part of the reimagining and reopening St. Pete. We're looking to schedule a June meeting, and at that time we certainly would extend an invitation to anyone who's interested in helping shape the committee's mission and goals.
Kevin, appreciate that. Some of the discussion that we were having about sustainability, opening that with that open invitation, looking at that being a more of a panel discussion. I think we were very encouraged with the transportation panel discussion that was led and had that discussion. I think in this crisis mode, it's become very apparent that sustainability and resilience, both economically, sustainability, are environmentally, all coincide together, especially for our location, and helping direct that initiative and focus for the future. I'd ask for the group, anyone that's interested in that, please either place your name in the chat, reach out to Matt, reach out to Kevin, and be a part of that panel discussion moving forward. We do want to open that up, particularly to other avenues. There's crossover between transportation, between housing for that initiative. We want to see, how do we work together? How do we coincide that? And how do we move forward for the Sustainability Committee? So please reach out on that. Kevin, we appreciate that update. Do we have any particular questions, or Matt, anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, there's not a whole lot that I want to add. Just we really want a wide range of thoughts in that in that meeting and in that room as we try and figure out the scope. It's been predominantly the sustainability minded folks, which is great. But as we try and reimagine what the future of St. Pete looks like, especially post COVID, and how businesses operate, not just in a sustainability manner when it comes to environmental sustainability, but also financial sustainability and whatnot. So, we're looking forward. I'm excited about this committee, and we've had a tough time getting it relaunched in 2020 with legislative session moving right into COVID, and right now it's June. So, anyway, I just want to thank Kevin and Brandon for stepping up and willing to kind of reimagine this whole thing, and I think that we're going to end up with a really good product in the end.
Yeah, I think it's
Hey, Jason, this is Brandon.
Yep.
Just going to give a quick little add on to that. I did reach out to Sharon Wright at the city just to kind of get an update from the mayor's sustainability office. And we didn't have a chance to connect other than a few emails back and forth. But as Matt said, Matt and Kevin said, we're looking to focus the committee on being part of the reimagining process and seeing where we can support our members in initiatives that were ongoing before all this happened, and how those may be affected. Folks had waste reduction and single-use plastic issues that we were all dealing with, and now with a lot of the PPE issues that have come up, we're trying to assess how those initiatives may be affected. And then, as Matt said, looking at how businesses are going to be operating and working from home, how that'll affect our different members, and from transportation to restaurants to everything kind of wrapped up into that. So yeah, I really appreciate anybody's input and invite you all to attend our June meeting.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. This is a perfect example of Chamber leading creatively on a reimagine, and taking a firsthand effort on ourselves, that we're not just telling everybody else to reimagine, but we're reimagining ourselves, and appreciate you guys for leading that charge. Moving on to new business, with the last few minutes that we have, we want to introduce a discussion or reintroduce a discussion, something that's been highlighted in our transportation panel discussion, something that's been discussed in relationship to keeping our residents safe, and allowing both for micromobility, but also to accommodate access to our businesses. So the highlight of our potential road closures has been a discussion, right? There has been discussion about the parking being able to be expanded, from the retail outlets into cafes into the parking space, allow them to show retail options however they see fit to expand into those parking. But there's also, if you look at Central Avenue, you have cafe seating, and you have 6 feet left between the cafes and the front door. Obviously, it's impossible to social distance on Central Avenue from a transportation level. So from that level, we began brainstorming, how can we keep our people safe and have them feel safe accessing our business? Because it's not just about access, it's also about the temperature of our residents coming back to businesses. And as things get busier, are they hesitant to do that? Can we make that environment more suitable? The city did take it upon themselves to take a survey of the businesses in regards to the parking issue, which we really appreciate them getting on the ground and getting that response. I have some numbers, thanks to Jason Mathis and Brooks for digging those up with the city. where 77% of residents favorable of temporary converting on-street parking to seating retail, 23 opposed, 71% of residents favor of converting parking during both daytime and evening hours, 22 opposed, and a few other details. 84% of respondents plan to require their employees wear masks, gloves, hand sanitizer. 67% of respondents felt that it was more important to have extra service space than parking. 33% has felt that parking was important, and 72% have more tables immediately available. I also, personally reached out to some business owners that were more in the takeout business, and they did express, wary on access. Overall, they were supportive that they believed that some more concessions on Central would help businesses as a whole. There was some discussion about potentially north-south streets being used more for takeout parking so you could access blocks. But this idea that we either could close some of the east-west parts of Central to vehicular traffic and open that up completely to micromobility. Would love that to coincide with scooters, but to give a bikes to business opportunity for Central and allow full mobility bikes on Central, where as currently it's really only safe on First and First, and wanted to bring the ideas and concerns or discussion to this group on thoughts. With that, just to open it up for some general open discussion. Brooks or Matt, feel free to add to that discussion as well.
Yeah, sorry, I actually just put it in the comments, but one of the parts of this discussion is that I think we could ease into it. One of the discussions that Matt and I have had around this is that maybe we just make it weekends only initially, and see how it goes from that.
Yeah, I think that's certainly a highlight to, do we test a few sections, and is it a Friday afternoon to Sunday, and the more active part of the weekend, and especially when people potentially have family or other groups of people traveling the Central Corridor.
Yeah, Councilwoman, I know that you and I have spoken about this a couple times. I was wondering if maybe you might be able to give a quick update on your conversations. I know you have to run in a minute, but thought we could just get your input real quick.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And I do have a 9:30, so I'm so sorry that I'll have to run after this. But Matt and I have talked. He brought me the idea of closing off a block of Central where we usually have First Friday anyway. Let's try doing that on a more regular basis and maybe have something more attractive than sanitation vehicles to serve as the barricades for that. I think it's a fantastic idea. I've spoken with Alan Delisle about it too, and also to Evan Morey. They're generally supportive, but we have to make sure, first of all, that all of the businesses that are affected on a block or a strip of the street are super supportive of that. It helps them just as much as it helps everyone else. And if we can identify a block or two that we can start this on as a pilot program and maybe do a 6 p.m. Friday to 6 p.m. Sunday period and just go from there. I'm all about starting small and then getting it right and then scaling it from there. So I'm all about it, and I would love to have started it already, but it's been a little bit difficult with COVID, but that also inspires us and gives us actually some strength, because we can use this as an ultimate reason to try something new. So I say let's go for it. I look forward to those further discussions.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks everyone. I'll see you soon.
All right, thank you, Gina.
Let's see. We're up at the 9:30 mark. If we want to have a couple comments, but I don't want to keep anyone too much after our appointed time.
No, I mean, we certainly appreciate Gina's, thought on that. I think we're getting some comments in the chat regarding this. If we'd like to take a couple more minutes to field questions or statements, we could do that and then close up. Let everybody get on to their day. Anyone else have a particular interest? I received some comments about that we would really want to see that extended more, so that the bikes and other means of travel could really use more of Central Avenue instead of just one block. That's some of the comments. Great time to activate Balm Avenue, pedestrian walkway, and really focusing more on Central Avenue trolley moving forward. I think those are all good access. If you have comments or strong feelings on this, or if you own or know a business owner that has nuance that we should be considering on this as we develop a little more of a proposal moving forward, please reach out. Give it to Matt, myself, Brooks, anyone involved in transportation or this committee. We appreciate your input. We appreciate all the elected officials that took time out of their day to not only give reports, but to stay with us throughout this discussion. I think it's great that they are in the know with what we are doing as a chamber, as what we are doing as a public policy committee. So thank you to our elected officials. Thank you, staff, Matt, for leading this charge. And the staff that's working way beyond their job titles. Chris himself has really been out there in the community and leading a sense of how to open the St. Pete Way. I think we have really grabbed onto that mantra as a city and are doing that the right way. So thank you everyone for your time and being part of this committee, and look forward to your input moving forward.
Jason, thank you very much for filling in for Ann today. I know that she had some connectivity issues when she's on vacation with her family, so great job filling in as our chair today. So thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Justice, Councilwoman Driscoll, and Representative Ben Diamond for joining us as well.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Jason. See you soon.